All set.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Middleton Board of Selectmen on Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, with the note that due to the state of emergency in Massachusetts due to COVID-19 outbreak, this meeting will be held via Zoom, and the meeting space is the intent that the virtual meeting space will be made accessible to the public. However, if this is not possible, despite best efforts and full and complete transcript, the meeting will be posted on the town's website as soon as practical upon the conclusion of this proceeding. We gave everybody the.
Want to play the guitar, but.
Okay. So let's go to warrant number 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And warrant 2022 this week on payroll, we have $670,760. And on bills payable, we have quite a large amount, and I can explain why that is. $5,298,737. The usual payroll deductions in the amount this week of $83,215. A payment to HKT, our master plan consultants, in the amount of $23,350. Trash hauling charge of $15,634. Purchase of power by MELD for $521,678, and then the repayment of the bond anticipation note that the board signed at the last meeting, and that is in the amount of $3,856,725.83. Darwood has reviewed this and asks the board's affirmative action.
Actually, I have a question on that, Mr. Chairman. Andy, can you explain a little bit on the trash hauling? Are we, is there somebody that's hauling for us now?
Oh, that's just the disposal cost.
Oh, disposal costs. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
just entered in that fashion.
Okay, no, I just misunderstood.
We're still doing it ourselves.
Okay, no, understood. Thank you.
Do I have a motion to accept warrant 2022?
Mr.
So
Chairman,
moved.
would we accept?
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, with one not being present. We have minutes of April 7th and April 14th. Any questions?
Move to accept.
I have a motion to accept as written. Do I have
Second.
Rick O'Brien? I'll second it then.
No, I second it. I'll second it.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Ryan seconds. A motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes again. 4-0. Mr. Sheehan, the town administrator, updates and report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, the stay-at-home order is having a pretty significant impact on local business activities, particularly smaller businesses, mom and pops, and that kind of thing. We're working with local businesses as much as we can to provide whatever assistance we can to help them survive and be prepared to start up again once the stay-at-home order is lifted. This is everything from putting them in touch with information on state and federal loan programs and other financial assistance. We've put a lot of that on our website, and basically whatever we can do to position them to come out of this and be ready to hit the ground running when things start up again. We were talking before the meeting that some businesses are taking the opportunity to make some improvements to their facilities. One of those is Maggie's Farm down the street. Maggie's is doing some excavation, a septic system in the parking lot that normally would be quite a disruption to their operation. Right now, it is not a disruption because they don't really have an operation. So if the shutdown lasts beyond the end of May or through the month of May, they'll probably be okay and they'll have everything buttoned up. They reached out to me that in the hopes that they could use some parking spaces at the golf course if things open up and they're not yet finished with the parking lot repairs. So working with them to and anybody else really that is in a similar situation to help them come through this and be ready to start back up again. So won't be many spaces. I think it's going to be a slow rollout when people start to come back out again, but we want to help them to the extent that we can, so that they're ready to reopen. So, and again, that's only if the stay-at-home order ends sooner than what we are now expecting. So, and I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes as well.
Actually, Andy, on,
yeah.
on that point, so, there's been a bunch of, the restaurants have stayed open in Middleton for takeout. I just saw today another one announced that they're opening back up for takeout. Obviously, I know we get the health agent here, and I'm sure he knows which are open or which are not. I'm just wondering if that's something we could provide on our website right now, if not maybe in one of our blast emails, just to let folks know that these are the restaurants that are opening, that are doing takeout. Many of them are doing curbside pickup and making it really easy. And I know a lot of people are, myself included, getting a little sick of cooking every night and looking to support businesses. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in town that would really like to know that they're supporting their local businesses. So I'm wondering if that's something we could put together, maybe in conjunction with the Board of Trade, or put on our website and or send out in our blast email.
Yeah, we can do that. Probably use social media for that as a way to get that out there. And I just want to be sure that we don't leave anybody out.
Exactly.
Yeah, if, we can work on that with Derek and others to get a sense of who's open and get the word out there for them, so that they can get a little publicity. So,
And I know a lot of them are also still selling gift cards, and there's people that may want to help with buying a gift card right now. And obviously
right.
there'll be cash to help them with not only staying open, but keeping their employees employed.
Right. So,
thanks.
In other updates, Dick Nazaro, the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, recently submitted his resignation. We'll be discussing this a little bit further, but just wanted to extend my thanks to Dick. He's been a good member for a number of years, and really has done a great job as chairman for the last several years. So he's going to be missed on the board, but we thank him for the time that he has given us over the years. So obviously the coronavirus has continues to take up a lot of our time. I mentioned that, or you'll see that Derek Fullerton is on. He's going to give a couple of updates in a couple of minutes. One thing I did want to point out, mostly for the benefit of the public, I think the board knows this, the numbers that the Department of Public Health, the Mass Department of Public Health releases, those community-wide numbers include everybody that's considered a resident. So in the case of Middleton, that includes population at the jail that may be positive with COVID-19. So as of, I think, last Thursday, we've started to split those numbers out, showing the at-large number of cases in Middleton, as well as the prison population numbers in Middleton. So as of today, we're at 33 at-large cases and 52 at the jail. So it's important, because when you look at the numbers without that that understanding, and then you look at comparable size communities, it looks like Middleton is significantly worse off, or has significantly more cases than comparable communities. So, and Derek can talk about that a little bit more. I mentioned at the last meeting that we were working on fixing up the website. Katrina O'Leary worked with Michelle Criassi on that to make some changes and organize that a little bit better. So I think it's a lot neater than it was, and still provides a good deal of information. The board members will recall last year the Mass DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, issued an order to complete, and that was work having to do with renewal of our water management permit and our water withdrawal permit. And that permit is issued jointly to Middleton and to Danvers. We responded to that. We worked with Danvers in our responses so that we were consistent across the two towns. We responded to that several months ago. We received, and I should add that Article 20 that we'll talk about a little bit later under the town meeting discussion applies directly to this water management withdrawal permit and the order to complete. So that is something that we should have done a while ago, but we're getting to it now. It could push to the forefront with this, the order to complete from the DEP. So our initial response, as I said, went in several months ago, and we received an email, or actually written correspondence today from DEP seeking a little bit of additional information. So we'll put that together. We're continuing to work cooperatively with Danvers and primarily Paul Goodwin and Tony Bertone from DPW, working with Danvers. So we'll get that response put together. The ramifications of not addressing the issues that DEP has raised could include fines. They haven't put that out there yet, but that's certainly something that they have in their arsenal. But more importantly, in many respects, is it definitely would mean no increase in our water withdrawals. I'm not overly convinced that we're going to get an increase, but I don't want a decrease in our permitted withdrawal. So we do need to work with them. Most of it is reasonable and makes sense. So we'll continue to with Tony, Paul, and the folks in Danvers. We'll continue to work to get that taken care of. And then finally, just again I've said it in the last several meetings, just a thank you to the department heads, the employees, the volunteers who are helping with things that largely go unnoticed, like delivering meals and handing out food at the food pantry and things like that. And thank you to the residents and the business owners for all the efforts in addressing the coronavirus and social distancing and keeping your hands to yourself so that we can hopefully get past this thing and at some point return to normal. So that's what I've got for updates tonight. And Derek will provide some additional updates on COVID-19.
Questions? Alrighty. If not, we'll go to our public comment period. And the first and only speaker, Derek Fullerton.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Good evening, everybody. So it's been a little over a month since local response has really been in full effect, and it continues to be a dream that I keep thinking I'm going to wake up from each day, and each day I wake up and we're still going in it, and we're going to be in it for a while. So I'm here just to give you a couple updates. Andy provided some good updates. I know that he's been keeping you guys apprised of everything, but I also wanted the opportunity, if you guys had specific questions, to ask me, and in case I needed to answer anything or get that information back to you, I could. So I just wanted to keep that open line of communication. So since day one, the major response, besides all the state and federal efforts that come down the pipeline that we have to put in place, is specifically locally related to our contact tracing with our public health nurse. So when a disease comes in the community, if it's a Middleton resident, whether it be the jail or a resident at large, we receive that in what's called the Massachusetts Virtual Epidemiological Network, acronym as MAVEN. So each day, multiple times a day, Tracy and I look into that system and see who has it in our community. And then we engage, mostly Tracy will engage in the contact tracing, and that basically involves when she has to call the individual or individuals up and determine their history, similar to what we normally would be accustomed to in a lot of communicable disease follow-up, but much different because of the virus this time. But, you know, contacting who your close contacts are, who you work with, who you've been around, and, you know, she has to track that all in the system. So when we go in there, you know, we have to put that in and work with the state epidemiologist and put that information in. So she's working basically around the clock, because when you get a person's contact information, you have to call, and a lot of times they're not answering. So, you know, it's a phone tag a while, then you get emails, etc. So, but she's been very successful on reaching our residents and working with them on quarantine, getting supplies. You know, we've delivered some masks, we've delivered some gloves, we've even delivered a laptop for the school to a student in one of the houses. So there's a lot of things that go beyond just contacting them, because you gotta provide some services. Another thing we've helped out with some other people is providing trash service, etc. Because if they can't leave the house. So there's a lot of things that develop out of this network system that when we get this disease in our community. And then basically, as we've been in this a month now, we're starting to deal with more release from quarantines and release orders, and Tracy has to give employment notices, etc. And we have to issue those types of things that are, if they're asking to go back into the workforce, etc. We have to get that information back after seeing the labs of patients, etc. So there's a lot of disease surveillance that we're dealing with, besides just the federal and the state orders that come through, and our local orders that the Board of Health been putting in place, such as the facial coverings. As Andy mentioned, we have 33 at-large residents, and then the 52 with the jail population, for a total of 85 confirmed cases to date. Out of those, the people have came off. They're not active cases anymore. So they've came off and have been released from quarantine, or have received their dual negative testing, etc. But we keep the active case number on the website to just be let people perceive and know that it's still community transmission. It's still in our community. Instead of reducing that number, we want people to know that this is still serious, that the stay at home and physical and social distancing is the major protective measures to put in place. We continually to receive personal protection equipment. Each week we have to put requests in to our health and medical coalitions. Police and fire have to work with MEMA. So we have 2 different channels. We've been slowly getting things in here and there. We got some more thermometers in this week to give to our first responders to supplement what they have. We've got some face shields in. There's been a lot of donation of face shields from manufacturers lately, so we've got a handful of those. N95s have just been delivered to some first responders. So those are some things that we've been waiting for. You know, they may not be the true N95s. It might be the KN95s from the crafts, etc. But we're getting those things. They're slowly starting to ramp up development and production of those. But it's been a challenge for the first 3 weeks of the initial response, because we didn't have all that stuff. So we're starting to get some of those things in. And right now, as you probably heard the governor today, we're in the surge. We have fewer cases in the last couple of days, but that doesn't mean we're in a trend of a downward trend. We're still going up in cases. It's just the last couple of days we've seen a little less overall statewide. The continued social distancing and personal protective efforts, and this whole community contact tracing initiative that goes in effect this week is a major part of the future of the COVID response. And the acronym is CCT, and that's probably what you've heard the governor talk about with Partners in Health. That's the initiative. The Middleton Board of Health will be signing up this week for that. And that basically is to tap into over 1,000 contact traces that can assist us as a local health department, do contact tracing and follow up. So we'll be engaging in that. The reason why it's so important, community contact tracing right now is when we were going up in the upward trend of the curve, the rate of transmission was about almost 4. So if you were COVID positive, it was estimated by statistical modeling that you could most likely infect 4 other people from that. And then as we entered all these social distancing measures and personal protective measures, that helped change that rate of transmission to 1.25. So, right now we're in that 1.25 in the surge. So that has helped us. But the big thing that they want to is get that number less than 1, because when we can get that number to less than 1 person being infected, 1-to-1 or less than 1 person, then that's when they can start removing some of these restrictions and we can start getting back to the new normal, whatever that may be. But that's where they feel the community contact tracing, similar to other diseases over the history of the globe, have really taken and reduced that number because of being able to contact people that aren't going to have availability to get testing soon enough, but be able to contact them and catch that domino and tell them to quarantine or check symptoms, etc. So that is the collaborative we're going to join into, and hopefully that will systematically over the entire state of Massachusetts and then the country's other states start implementing some of that. Hopefully that will help bring that R number below 1. And I don't know, I don't have the crystal ball when that will be, but I think once we get that R number below 1, we'll start to see some phased out changes in society, especially here in Massachusetts. So that's kind of where we are. The facial covering order in Middleton has been very well received. A couple nasty messages, but that's that's par for the course. But overall, people have been very happy that that's been put in place. It wasn't just to protect patrons; it was also to protect our essential workers. Market Basket for one. I stop in there at least 1 to twice a week, 2 times a week, speak with the managers of a lot of our facilities and towns. Morale is way down as we see this across the board, not within just businesses, but in, families and households, seniors graduating. Morale is down, but the workforce at Market Basket is at about 40% right now. So that's, a combination of a matrix of many things, people just scared to go to work. A lot of youth work there and parents don't want them working. And then you've had sick workers at Market Basket that are either quarantined or positive. So when your workforce is down to 40% and you want to have a continuity of operations of your food line, your food supply, then having a facial covering order, not only for patrons, but for the actual employees has been an effective way to try to help this community transmission. We don't want Market Basket having to close down in our community as they're such a essential service for us. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Each week I submit a weekly COVID report. There will be one out Friday. I break down the numbers. The numbers ironically match Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts pretty much, with the highest amount of cases are in that 40 to 50 or 50 to 59 age range. And of the 3 mortalities we have had in our community, unfortunately, they have this isn't a HIPAA breach or anything, they have underlying health conditions. And if you look at the state statistics for mortality related to this virus, it's 97% of people that have had underlying health issues. So the data is matching up within our community pretty much to what we're seeing statewide. That's pretty much long-winded. Sorry I talked a lot. I just wanted to have that opportunity, but I'm here to answer any questions. And hopefully if I don't have that answer, I can get back to you with it.
Eric, can you tell us how many of those, if without, again, a HIPAA breach, how many of those cases are hospitalized currently?
Currently or over the course?
Right now, of the people that
there's
identify with COVID.
I'm going to give you an estimate, and this may change. I would say out of the active cases, so let's just say we've had 33 from the beginning, and I'm going off without my notes because my notes are at the office. I'm at home now. 33 from the beginning. We probably have 16 to 18 active cases out of those 33. And out of those 16 to 18 cases, I believe there's 3 hospitalized.
Okay.
And I can confirm that, Tim.
No, that's fine. It's just on a general nature. I just wanted, kind of tells me a little something, you know.
Yeah. And I do get concerned when I see the disease report each day come in, and, you know, the first thing I look at is, because they don't always list the, you know, if there's an underlying health illness, but, you know, a lot of times when they come in, I do get a little concerned because the first thing you look at is the age bracket. And, you know, like today we've had some in the, you know, come in the high age bracket. So a lot of times if it's not even a underlying condition, sometimes it's just the strength at that point. But we've seen some great recoveries, 104-year-old person across the country. So it doesn't mean that it's, you know, that it's the worst case scenario, but then again, there's some other things that can kick in.
Great. Anybody else?
So Derek, you saying of the 30 some odd that were of the general population, about 15 have recovered and have now tested negative?
Yes.
Okay.
If we have about 16 to 18, so yeah, probably about 15, yeah.
Okay. And how often after positive are they being retested again?
It's where they are. So for instance, like for one case, a person was hospitalized, intubated, and so they want to get that bed freed up right away. So they test them right in the hospital, go right to their labs. And I know that the results have come back directly right from the lab within the 24 hours. The other people that are quarantining at home, depends on when they go back and get tested. And then the second time for the second confirmation test. So that can be anywhere between 2 to 4 days, or, you know, in sometimes it's involved my nurse saying you need to go back and get your second test. You can't just resume to the workforce. You have to have that. So it's not a magic number, but the faster testing returns that we're seeing is the people obviously in the hospital because they're getting tested because they want to move them off like the ventilators beds and put them down into general floors and then discharge them as soon as they can.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Our next agenda item is a discussion of the citizens petition with petitioner Eric Cudmore, who I see is on the line, with respect to the annual town meeting warrant article 22. So, Andy, did you want to?
Guys, I'm going to sign off.
Everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me okay?
Andy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so the article now that Eric will be talking about is Article 21. It's the last article, came in as a citizen's petition. So I'll let him talk about it and answer any questions the board has. If there's anything in terms of process, I can address that, or the town clerk can maybe weigh in if there's process questions on that.
And first, just so we can confirm, this has been certified, the signatures, it's been certified for acceptance?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Go
Can
ahead.
everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. For those who don't know me, my name is Eric Cudmore. I've been a resident here in Middleton for close to 16 years. And the reason why I've decided finally to put this petition forward is one of my goals here in the town, we started in 2005. I've been trying to get a assisted living or an independent living facility here in town. And the first shot I had at it was Sunrise, which was behind Angelica's, which then the market crashed and that fell through. And then a couple of years ago, we had Angelica's under agreement again with a different company called Hawthorne. It was under agreement for about 9 months. And that fell through because of the treatment plant that had to be put in. It was about $2 million, and it sort of threw the numbers out of whack. So the only place that one of these facilities can go into town is somewhere where there is sewerage. And that obviously is on Locust Street. And with this piece of property that the town has, it's not a guarantee, obviously, that we can get sewerage from Danvers, but it's a shot. So the elderly is just, it's dear to me, and it's been something I've been trying to do. I'm a local real estate agent here in town. I list a lot of houses with older people, and they have no place to go here in town. So I personally would love to see a facility like this in town. I've talked with Andy for probably, I don't know, maybe 3 years now, maybe longer. I've talked to a couple people on the board about trying to get this on the warrant, put this property out to bid, and it just always goes dead. So I decided this year to go ahead and do a citizen's petition to try and get this on the warrant. And that's where I'm at.
Any questions for Mr. Cudmore?
So just a couple of questions, if I could, Mr. Chairman. So we had a similar item, I think, for a different amount of money a couple of years ago on a town meeting warrant that actually failed to allow the town to, because town meeting has already granted authority to the Board of Selectmen to potentially solicit bids to sell the property should we want to. What has not been approved is a dollar amount to support what our bylaws require, which is a appraisal of the property that needs to be done to determine fair market value and appraised value before any sale could ever occur. So I'm assuming, Eric, that the dollars that you're proposing here is to actually for that purpose of appraisal purposes?
Correct. And the dollar amount that I did put down there was a dollar amount that was in one of the warrants previous. So
Okay.
that's where I came up with that.
Okay. Secondly, just, and I know you understand this, but I think for purposes of understanding the thought process that you have here is, and I know you've had entities that have been interested in other areas in town, including this area. The zoning currently that's in place now does not provide for such a development to be put there.
Correct.
And the problem that I think we've encountered when we've looked at this property for, if as a town we would ever decide to sell or dispose of the property is right now we would be disposing it based on the current zoning, which is single family zoning. So obviously, if you look at the value of a zoned single-family property, you look at his zoning of a property that's zoned differently, the values won't necessarily match. So we may be in a little bit of a apples to orange discussion here. And then secondly, if there was somebody that was interested in doing a independent living facility, for example, it wouldn't be incumbent upon the town to make those zoning changes. It would be incumbent upon the buyer taking that risk of buying property and then attempting a zoning change.
So this particular company, Columbia Pacific, we've done several in the state, and believe it or not, there's a lot of towns that don't have zoning for this. And a lot of times the bylaw is created so one of these facilities can go in. So what you're saying is so obviously we'll go out to bid. So, contractors are going to bid on it, whoever's going to bid on it. If this company, Columbia Pacific, was granted the property, you would expect them to close upfront without permits? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, no, I think what I was saying, maybe I said it a backwards way, is should town meeting approve these dollars, right now the appraisal that would be done would be appraised on how it's zoned. So that would not necessarily mean that is what the value of the property would be if it was zoned differently. So I just wanted to make sure we were talking apples to apples in terms of what you're attempting to do here. And I think I understand clearly what you're trying to do. I know you have an entity that is interested in this property, but I just wanted to ensure that you understood that if there was a expenditure of dollars that were made available by a town meeting approval of this, we may be looking at a value of something that's different.
So I'm pretty sure this board has seen some previous offers that I've put in on this property.
Yes,
Have you or have you not?
we have.
So I think the last one that was put in was either 3 million or 3.2 million. So from myself, from doing land development, from what would look like how many houses could go there, let's say, I don't believe that a contractor could purchase the property for what this particular company could offer. And I've talked to them prior that what has happened recently in the world. And, they were willing to go up in their offer considerably for this piece of property. It would be close to, the Middleton golf course being a wash for what you guys spent for that, and probably even a little bit better than that. So that's why I find it very hard why, the town keeps sitting on this property when there's a good chunk of money sitting there, that could help this town. I mean, you guys are going to go in front of the, town meeting and ask for a lot of money this year to get that project started. There's a good chunk of money sitting there. So, I mean, it's just my 2 cents. It's all it's worth, but.
One of the reasons is once it gets shot down, we can't bring it right back up. You can, but we can't. So that's why we couldn't bring it right up again, because it's just a bylaw that just prevents us from doing such things.
Right, but that was in 2017 that it got shot down, right?
Yeah, so it's 2 years. This will be the 3rd year.
Yeah.
So
I've mentioned it to people. I would have loved to seen the board bring it up, and you guys do it, but it didn't seem like that was going to happen again this year. So I just, I did.
yeah, I mean, I spoke on favor at town meeting floor of expending the dollars to at least allow us to get a true appraisal cost before we made any decision. And I think we have a little chicken and egg here, Eric. It's kind of hard to make a decision as a board without the ability to actually determine value.
Right.
Yeah, but
I understand that.
it's on
But
the
the
warrant.
board's had a couple more years to get this back on the board, on the warrant too.
Yeah.
And I've asked every year about it.
Well, like I said, up until this year, really couldn't have done it. All right. Is there anything else, Andy, that we need to discuss? If it's on the warrant?
It's on the warrant under the statute with the correct number of signatures, which in this case is only 10 signatures. The board has to include it on the warrant, so it is on there. It was the last one that came in, so it's and it's a non-financial article in the true sense, so it's positioned in its place for that reason.
Great.
So I would just ask Andy, through you, Mr. Chairman, if, so I know the author of the petition, the language that was drawn up is the language that were signatures, but there's also a purpose language that we would provide as part of this, as we do with every article. I just ask if you could work with Andy to make sure that the language we have in the purpose matches what your intent and purpose is. Obviously, when this article comes up at town meeting, you as the author or any other of the 10 signature voters would have the ability to get up and make the case and then have an open debate on this. This will also go through the process where it'll go before the master plan committee as well as the finance committee. But it is, it is on the ballot. That's the beauty of initiative petition. It is on the town meeting warrant.
I'm assuming the meeting's getting pushed off, correct?
Yes, town meeting is now the 10th of
Oh.
June.
Of June.
June.
Okay.
All right.
Is there anything that you folks want me to do at the town meeting? I mean,
No, I would suggest that, like I say, we had someone, to be honest with you, that did a petition and didn't listen. And when they, remember, you're the one that has to move it and second it. So make sure you have people to move and second it, because that person didn't get up and it didn't get voted on. So just, you know, if you want, you could just call us and we'll tell you the procedure, just so you, and, you know, bring people or prepare your case.
okay.
Yeah, and I would say just because this also goes before the master plan committee as it does, correct, Andy? Does it go before master plan?
Yeah, master plan and planning board, I believe,
Master
will weigh
plan,
in on
planning
this.
board and finance committee. So Eric, you have an opportunity to explain this to those three boards as well. You know, you could do it in person in one of these Zoom meetings. You could do it in writing by email or otherwise. But the master plan committee and the planning board will probably most likely make a recommendation on this. And I would say you just want to make sure you get your rationale and argument for this forward to them. And you know, you have every right to do that and every right to take it to the floor of town meeting. I mean, personally, I'll tell you, I supported this last time at town meeting. I'm not in opposition to it. It allows the town, if the opportunity comes, to actually determine fair market value. And then this board has the authority to determine whether or not we want to go out in a competitive bid, because under state law and regulation, we have to go out for bid. I mean, you could come in tomorrow and Eric say, I want to buy this because I want to put in a housing development. We can't sell it to you without going out for bid, as you know.
Yeah.
So, but without dollars, we can't do the portion of this that's required under our bylaws, which is to actually get a fair market value assessment.
I mean, you know, I don't know if anyone would answer this, but is there a reason why the town seems like they're, you know, not wanting to sell this property right now? I mean, is someone willing to answer that? Maybe I would understand it a little bit better.
I don't think that's the case.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
I think zoning has something to do with it, so. I
You
think
gotta remember the last time we presented it, and it was just so happened that there was enough naysayers that were saying no to everything. It had nothing to do with this, my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that was right after the big development up on Dixie Drive and everybody was shooting.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the approval that was given from town meeting to actually sell, or for this Board of Selectmen to entertain selling this, was a rather close vote.
Yeah, it was weak. Yep.
And it actually had happened before the Dixie Drive development began. What happened post Dixie Drive development was the failure, I think, at the next town meeting to actually approve the dollars to allow for all of those costs associated with developing fair market value. You know, and I think so. I think some of it has been zoning, at least for me, it's been zoning, and another part has been timing as well.
Right.
And quite honestly, the town was very actively engaged in determining our next steps for police, fire, town hall, senior center, and we looked very seriously at that property for use of maybe a senior center, community center, and or police center, police department as well. And after a lot of determination, we decided to go with the property at the golf course.
Okay. You know, just little FYI, this company that I've been talking to, you know, back a couple of years ago, they were willing to do actually some type of senior center inside of a independent living facility. I think Ryan wanted like 10,000 square feet. It wouldn't be anything like that, but they were, you know, open to doing something like that. So I don't know, maybe that could work for the town too, but obviously there's a long way to go.
Yeah, let's get past getting the
Yeah.
financing approved first.
Well, I appreciate you folks inviting me. I thank you very much.
No problem.
Well, I would keep in mind, if I might, Mr. Chairman, that I recall in point of history, the last time we had it for the 20,000, that was the last article of that town meeting as well. So like the chairman said, make sure you have the, you know, the interested parties in the room.
I mean, I feel as though that amount is on the high side personally, but I just, like I said, I used it because that's what was used last time. I don't
Right.
know if that can be changed at this point. If you,
No, I don't, he's not talking about the money. He's talking about you should bring friends, neighbors.
oh yeah, I know that.
Right. Because it was the last article. The last time we had it, it was also the last article of the
Right.
evening, and that is what we have right
Everyone's
here
leaving.
too. So just pointing that out.
Yeah, and everyone's leaving at that point, right?
Right. Right.
Let's hope we can actually open town meeting.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, folks. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I hope you all stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. You too.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. We're going to go to our next agenda item, which is to review and vote to create a COVID-19 donation fund and vote to accept COVID-19 donation policy. Mr. Sheehan.
So we've, as a result of everything that's happening, we've had a lot of interest in people giving money to the town or giving money to be used for certain purposes. So as we've started to try to figure out how best to do that, we concluded that the best way was to do something sort of standalone rather than tell people that, send them to a region-wide entity like Essex County Community Foundation, or just say, well, the only place you can donate in town is the food pantry. Some people wanted to do more than that. So we put this policy together. Tanya worked on this and put this together so that we can have a place for people that want to donate more specifically toward COVID-19 relief. So it would be a gifts and donations account under Chapter 44, similar to what we did not too long ago with veterans and also with the senior center following the developers donation a couple of months ago, or the developers commitment a couple of months ago to contribute towards a new senior community center. So it would essentially put the same parameters around it. Anything under $500 can be expended without, can be accepted by the town administrator. Anything greater than $500 would have to be accepted by the board. That's consistent with our general donations policy. And then any expenditure under $5,000 can be approved by the town administrator. Anything over $5,000 would need to be approved in advance by the Board of Selectmen. So we'll talk a little bit later in the meeting about a donation that is being contemplated and appears to be in the works, and this would sort of set the stage for that donation as well as others. We've had other people reach out to us and
Right.
I have a comment.
Sure.
The policy period is the duration of the state of emergency, but the needs could last longer than the state of emergency is lifted. So I would suggest, the later of the lifting of the state of emergency or some date like the end of the year.
okay. We can certainly make that change.
Yeah, and I'd also, and I understand that every need may look different, but I think there should be some level of probably design of what is expected that this relief program through donations would be utilized for. Mainly for the fact that should there be substantial gifts and donations that are given on this, and I mean, if we adopt this, we should promote this far and wide. As folks are wanting to help in their community, this is yet another way that they can help in their community. But I think it should have some level of description of examples of how this could support. Again, I fully support the ability for you, as written in this policy, to identify those needs that may be used in a certain dollar amount. But I think it would be helpful to kind of detail some examples to, should we get a bunch of donations into this, then we can at least help promote what this fund could be used for. And maybe we look at what some other communities, I know, obviously the city of Boston has done a substantially large one, but, what are some examples that that's being used for?
Okay.
And I do know we have other funds. We have the food bank donation, the veteran service account, and we also have a considerable donation that was given years and years ago to the town that we support individuals with food needs and utilities needs. Would this be used in supplement of that? Would this be used in concert with that? So maybe a little thought around that as well. It maybe does not have to be put into the policy, but if we do roll this out publicly and let folks know that this gift program is available to both give to and receive support from, what is it expected to be? What are those parameters going to look like?
Okay, we can add that. Do you want us to keep this open and bring it back?
No, I'm comfortable with adopting this.
Yeah.
I'm personally comfortable with adopting this tonight, but just know that it'd be helpful to have some meat on that to explain to folks what we expect it would be used for, and then quite honestly, to help promote this with folks that may want to contribute to it, knowing that they could help their neighbors with A, B, or C.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman, just take note towards the center there. We were anticipating some of what you were saying there, Brian, in that the town administrator shall develop an internal policy. That's something that we still need to work out. So yeah, and as well as the promotion. So
Good. And
absolutely.
Then, and I recommend as quickly as possible we start promoting this, because there's a lot of folks that want to help that luckily have not been hit by the financial effect of what's going on as hard as others have, and want to help out. And this is a way of not only helping, but knowing that what you're doing is going to stay right in your community, right in your neighborhood.
Right, do I have a motion with Costa's modification?
Mr. Chairman?
I would make, one other, sort of semantic change. Yeah, that, the sentence that Tanya highlighted, the town administrator shall develop regulations for the distributions of gifts instead of an internal policy. Adopting a policy with an internal policy within it seems to me a little clunky, and just calling it regulations would be better.
Okay, with that amendment, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I hear none. It passed unanimously. All right. Continuing on donations, we have a review to vote to accept a donation from Balchick Renewables to be used for the Council on Aging's Meals on Wheels and outreach activity. Do I have a motion to accept that?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Our next agenda item is a vote to close and sign the June 20th, 2020 annual town election warrant.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the annual town election warrant, which is being held on June 20th, 2020.
Second.
The motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Just, if I could just chime in with one point. The ballots that will be printed will have the original date of May 19th. So as a result of the statutory relief that the legislature gave us a few weeks ago, they basically said, whatever your date was is kind of not the official date, but it's the date of record, the historic record in a way. So there's no need for us to change the date to reflect June 20th. And more importantly, there's still a great deal of uncertainty about where we're going to be on June 20th. So we don't want to necessarily change the ballots to reflect June 20th. And then it ends up being, June 28th or July or something like that. So just so you're not surprised.
No, I understand, and I know we talked about this at the previous meeting, but now that we have closed the town election warrant, and I know from our last meeting last week, we finalized the items on there. When will ballots be available, regardless of the date of the election? When will ballots be available that people could begin mail-in absentee voting?
Eileen, do you want to weigh in on
Yeah,
that?
I'm going to weigh in. So the ballot's going to, as Andy said, we're going to print the May 19th date because that's the best bet right now. We can use them whenever. It doesn't matter. We don't have to change the date. The ballots, I just sent the proof because I was waiting on some finalizing of what the ballot was going to look like. So the ballots probably going to be here in about a week, and we're going to start our early voting campaign. So as soon as the ballots are printed, but know that, you know, there's a lot of towns in line to get ballots. So they'll be soon, but I don't have an exact date.
Okay.
All right, so we had a motion and a second. We did not take a vote. All right, we have a vote to close the annual town election. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, opposed, hearing none, it passes unanimously. Our next agenda item is continue review and discussion of the June 10th, 2020 annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to draw attention to a couple of articles. We reviewed this last week, went through it fairly quickly. Most of this warrant is fairly mundane. It is kind of the usual things that we see. Of the 21 articles, I think 16 of them are articles that we typically see every year. And so they don't need a lot of attention. Obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about the operating and the capital budgets before. We're going to spend some more time 2 weeks from Thursday talking about it at our budget hearing and warrant reading. And so I think the finance articles, the annual articles that we see don't need a lot of attention. But there are a couple of articles that do need a little attention. Article 17, which is an amendment to the revolving fund bylaw. If you recall, there was a change in the statute a couple of years ago that encouraged us to adopt a general bylaw for the governing of revolving funds. It's not clear to me that this was particularly helpful or as helpful as the legislature thought it would be, but we did it. Most communities did it, so we're using it. So we adopt the spending limits under Article 8 on this warrant. Article 17 would add one more revolving fund to the revolving fund bylaw. We've been collecting donations from developers over a number of years for sidewalk and pedestrian improvements. That now is at about almost $130,000, and that's just sitting there in I believe it's in an agency fund, just kind of out there in limbo. It doesn't become part of our general fund receipts. It doesn't close to free cash, but it's not really available for use. So in working with Sarah Wood and with her contacts at the Department of Revenue, they suggested setting this up as a revolving fund. And it would be used at the discretion of the Public Works Superintendent and myself, or my successor as a town administrator, to spend these funds that are generally raised by through the permitting process, generally through the Planning Board or Zoning Board of Appeals, but could come in through potentially through other avenues as well, but less likely. And again, it's for pedestrian and sidewalk improvements. So going back to Article 8, which is the appropriation or the spending limit for the year, we've put in an amount of $30,000, which I think is sufficient for what we anticipate for fiscal '21. We've got some sidewalk projects that we want to get going on, some work on South Main Street potentially, or River Street. There's some development happening on River Street, and there'll be some gaps to fill, and maybe some work on Essex Street. So probably not all three of those, maybe not even two of those, but one of those would probably be enough for the first year in order to get us going. So that's what Article 17 is. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I will be talking to the Finance Committee about these, all the financial articles, as well as this one.
Yeah, Andy, if there's 130,000 accumulated, why 30,000 as the spending limit in Article 8?
Mostly bandwidth, Costa. We didn't think that we had projects ready to go that would necessitate more than that. We don't have plans done, engineering drawings done for the projects that we're thinking about. Some of them we're waiting on other entities, private entities, to prepare the design plans for us, and then we would do the construction, or maybe we would get going on some of the design on some of these, so that in a later year would be ready to move forward.
So, this contemplates new sidewalks as opposed to repairing existing sidewalks?
Yes, correct. It's expanding the sidewalk and pedestrian networks that are already in existence.
So this would not be used for any repairs or updates, only new?
At this point, we don't anticipate using it for repairs, only for new.
Are repairs allowable under any, is the new hour restriction or some other restriction?
Some of the donations came with some limitations or restrictions. The one I can think of was for Walgreens. They specified sidewalks along South Main Street. I think it was connecting to River. So it wasn't specific that it be only used for new, or it was not specific that it not be used for rehab or replacement. But it's, sort of the spirit of that donation was that it would be for that area around where they're located.
So now, would future donations, be encouraged to be just into the fund without many limitations? Because then, we could get very confused trying to keep track of what limitation comes with what money.
Yes, and that is a challenge. And so what we'd like to do is sort of spend the amounts that have been earmarked for specific areas or with specific restrictions, get those done so that in the future, as we collect more revenues, more donations, as we embark on more projects, it can be more generic and less prescriptive.
Okay.
And Andy, similar to Article 8, that'll be an annual dollar amount that we limit to. So I
Yes.
think that Costa's point with 130,000 in there, you're telling me it's bandwidth, but if the opportunity arose this year, let's say that there's additional sidewalks that are being built on School Street because of two projects that are before the boards right now. One of them is a small subdevelopment roadway that's being proposed, as well as the new 99's restaurant. Hopefully both of those will see the planning and or Board of Appeals require some sidewalks similar that were required to the child care center that was built there. We may be able to quickly expand upon that and actually have sidewalks now that go from South Main Street all the way down to Natsu Way and the fields
That's
and
correct.
park that is down there. So as long as you think that the $30,000 limit this year is not going to limit your ability to do a meaningful project.
No, we're comfortable with that dollar amount for this year. We would expect that we would be in position in future years to increase that.
Okay, okay.
All right, anybody else?
Okay, Article 18 is, we've talked about this a couple of times. This is the change to the repeal of the existing personnel bylaw, which was written in the 60s, I believe, and really hasn't been updated and has not kept up with the changing times. This would repeal that existing personnel bylaw, insert a new bylaw in its place. Article 18 is the bylaw piece of it. Article 19 is the home rule petition piece of it. So there would be going hand in hand with Article 18 is the home rule petition that would make some changes to the charter that are specific to personnel in order that the charter and the personnel bylaw are consistent. So, and again, the changes to both the personnel bylaw and the personnel sections of the charter only bring those documents into conformance with what the historic and current practice has been. So it's not expanding any authority or doing anything that's not already done. It's just putting the structure in place so that it is more appropriate the way that it's being done. So, and we did talk a couple of meetings ago when the last time that we talked about this is the last time I think Kate Federoff was in or was in by Zoom, adopting or taking a vote beforehand so that it would go into effect the later of the annual town meeting or July 1. So if the board wants to do that tonight, we have that language on the screen. If you want to kick that off, we can do that at a later date, whatever the board's preference is.
Someone want to make that motion?
I'll move to approve the personnel policies as presented, subject to the vote of the town meeting to repeal and replace the personnel bylaw, which policies shall become effective upon town meeting approval or July 1, 2020, whichever shall occur last.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second just one discussion item. So Andy, there is a distinct possibility that while our town meeting is now scheduled for June 10th, there is in the legislative approval that the state has given that some towns may go past June for a budget approval and maybe into a 1/12 budget. I'm hoping we're not at that point, but as the language is written here, we would just have to amend to a later date.
It would be effective the later of town meeting or July 1. So if town meeting's July 15th,
Okay.
go into
It'll
effect.
be July 15th. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Okay, I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Do I have a vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
Article 20 is, I mentioned in my opening remarks and the town administrator's updates, the change to or the addition of an overlay district for groundwater protection. This goes hand in hand or comes directly out of that order to complete with DEP in order to put restrictions in place or land use controls in place around our drinking water supply. We only have 2 wells. They're right on Route 114 on the river. What's known as the Zone 2, which is the area that contributes to a groundwater supply, straddles the town line. So roughly half of it is in Middleton and roughly half of it is in Danvers. Danvers has restrictions in place and has had them in place for a while. Really the purpose of other than to be compliant with DEP, which is not insignificant, The purpose of the bylaw is to ensure adequate quantity and quality of drinking water, preserve and protect our sources of drinking water, and prevent contamination of that drinking water supply. The two wells are very much a secondary or a tertiary source of the supply that that services Danvers and Middleton. Most of the water for both communities comes out of Middleton Pond, but there is an amount that comes out of these wells that gets mixed in with that water that comes out of the pond and out of the treatment plant at the pond. So unlike most, I would say most communities which are typically reliant almost exclusively or exclusively on groundwater supplies, we are far less reliant on groundwater supplies. So only a tiny portion of the town will be covered by this overlay district, and it is just the area immediately at the town line along Route 114. It extends across River Street a short distance, and it extends across Route 114 up in the Log Bridge Road area and roughly the area of some of the commercial area around Market Basket. So the sort of the guts of the proposed bylaw are not terribly unique to Middleton. There is a template that's available, and most communities have lifted that template and made adjustments as needed if they deem necessary. This is quite similar to a bylaw that I proposed in a community that I worked in a number of years ago. So it's not unique to Middleton in the way that it's structured.
Well, that flows us to the next agenda item, which is a vote to close June 10th annual town meeting pending finalization of Article 20.
Yeah, actually, before the board does that, I would like to, I was going to have the board vote to close the warrant tonight. I don't expect anything new coming in. My concern is the uncertainty about the date. I think if the board wants to close, you can always reopen.
Yeah. So the only question I have on that, on closing the warrant, so have some growing concern over, and I know you and Sarah are working on some revenue and budget projections that we'll talk with the finance committee going forward. But as long as it's understood that, for me, some of these items I think need to change to be reflected, and more specifically, I have a growing personal concern with some of our expenditures on the capital front, given that I will tell you what we have for free cash this year is going to look dramatically different next year. And even for this fiscal year that's going to be closing, I mean, we're going to look at better part of a quarter of little to no hotel tax and very little revenue from meals tax, and likely a delay and or reduction in growth in our excise tax. So and we can have this discussion later, but I think that some of our capital items should be at a minimum delayed to a fall special town meeting, when we will have a much better picture of both the economy and what our revenue is going to look like within the fiscal year. So as long as it's understood that while we close it, some of the items within here, I think will likely need to be changed, but the actual warrant numbers won't.
So yeah, and to that point, that's fine, and I think that reinforces the benefit of not putting a bow on the warrant at this point. And if there's a discussion that's going to happen in 2 weeks, either at the next board meeting or 2 nights later at the joint meeting with the finance committee, then I would just as soon keep the warrant open and not close it tonight. Just mechanically, it makes it easier for us to work through some changes if changes are forthcoming. The other concern that I have, so a couple of concerns. Are we going to be able to go forth on June 10th? Who knows? That's a coin toss. I think we'll be able to get everything that we need to get done in time to go forth on June 10th. The question is, will it be June 10th or will it be later than that? The one sort of big wrinkle that I see is the printing of the physical warrant that we mail out to people. We are required to do that, and we use the jail or the Department of Corrections. It used to be the Middleton jail. Most recently, it's been the Lawrence facility that has done the printing for us. Where there is, and I'm not trying to create hysteria, but where there is higher percentage of COVID-19 cases in the Department of Corrections, maybe we want to go in a different direction. Maybe we want to either print it in-house or we want to do it all digitally. If we do it in-house, we certainly can do that. That's not terribly difficult. We would want to reduce the scope of the physical book as much as possible, though, in order to reduce the amount of printing that we do. Printing at the prison doesn't cost us much, other than really it's just the cost of the paper. If we do it ourselves, there's additional cost to that. And so I'm throwing it out there tonight. I'm not looking for a decision from the board tonight, but maybe we can talk about that either on May 5th at May 5th at the next regular meeting, or May 7th at the joint meeting with the Finance Committee.
So remind me again, we have a bylaw that requires the printing and distribution of our warrant, correct?
Yeah, I'll look it up as we're talking. It's either the charter or the bylaw.
And the reason why I asked that is the declaration of the emergency state that's going on. Does that allow us to have some leeway with that? And what constitutes printing?
Yeah, it doesn't provide specific declarative relief, but I think there's an argument that could be made that that due to the unique circumstances, that we would be able to do it differently. I would check with council before we do that. And
I mean, I would. So for the purpose of, because town meeting, we're not sure the date yet. We would want to print this. I mean, we know once we have a date, we're going to have to lock our budget down and approve to go to town meeting. But I'm wondering if there is a way that we could provide the level of transparency without having to print all of this. And if we do it ourselves, whether it's internally or through a separate printing company, it's going to cost us a lot more money. Secondly, the amount of activity that's happening electronically now, I mean, not all our students are being educated at home. Everybody is working from home. We're holding this meeting electronically. Maybe there's a way that could be the submission of a large postcard that's reminding people of the changed town meeting date. And if they can log in to our website to receive online access to the warrant, but should they feel that they need a hard copy, please email or contact at this number and address, and one could be sent to them.
Yeah, the language in the charter suggests that it has to be printed and mailed, although I could make an argument that
the internet probably didn't exist when that happened.
It didn't. So I think an argument could easily be made that it doesn't actually require that it be mailed to the house. But I think, if there's a sort of in-between place where we mail some information to people, or we do some, extensive outreach in order to alert people to where they can find the information, I think that would suffice.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend if we do not mail the entire warrant, I'd recommend we do at least a large postcard that does a couple of things. Informs people that town meeting is a different date, what that date is. Should we end up due to social distancing requirements, use 2 rooms where people will be 6 feet apart from each other, for example, and part of the room will be transmitted up to the main room like we have the technology. Explain that and explain the date changed. I mean, I'm sure everybody understands, but it would be helpful for people to get this into their calendars. But I'm not convinced that if you're struggling, Andy, with having this printed in the jail, with the issues that are happening there, or expending even more money and then figuring out if we actually have the time frame to get this done, I'd rather just ensure that we get the notification out, let people know, and give them an option to get this electronically. And if need be, the staff at Town Hall could actually mail out copies should anybody need a copy.
Yeah, I would go a little, further, in the mailing. I would do just like a summary of the articles. So that, article, whatever is the omnibus budget article, 20 is the groundwater protection article. And it's over maybe a couple of pages, but it gives everybody a sense of what the articles are about, invites them to, view all of the verbiage on the website. And, if you really then feel that you need something, in writing, then you can get the full copy.
I like that. All right, so from what I hear, we're going to move this agenda item for 2 weeks to our next meeting of May 5th.
So just one more question, Mr. Chairman. When would be the deadline? Not that I'm expecting this, but if another citizen's petition came in that required a hearing before the planning board or master plan committee, when would be the drop dead date of when that would happen? Because technically with the warrant open, there's still the ability for filing. So, I don't want to keep this open for too long of a period, then us get stuck with the inability to actually hold hearings on the topics.
Yeah, so it's actually too late for anything new to come in. The planning board wouldn't be able to, I don't believe they would be able to advertise and hold a public hearing in advance of June 10th at this point. We had put, when we do the calendar around the first of the year, we put a deadline in there for citizen petitions. We put a deadline in for department and committee requests for warrant articles, but also one for citizen petitions. That was in March, somewhere around March 12th, I think.
Okay.
So that's gone. So anything new that came in would have to come in as a citizen's petition, either for the next special town meeting or to call a special town meeting. So either 100 signatures to go on the next special or 200 to call a special.
Okay.
All right. Our next agenda item is to review and vote to appoint Craig Hartwell to finish the unexpired term of Richard Nazaro with an appointment until June 30th, 2021. Any discussion? How about a motion?
I'll move to appoint Greg Hartwell to finish the unexpired term until June 30th, 2021.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I would second with thanks to Richard and a welcome back to Craig.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None? Passes unanimously.
And Mr. Chairman, will we place on the next warrant the appointment, our next meeting, the appointment of an alternate member to the Board of Appeals to fill the vacancy that Craig is now moving up from?
Will we have time to get people to apply in the 2 weeks?
Yeah, we can put that right out and see if there's interest in the next 2 weeks.
Okay, great. All right, we'll do that. And that's along with new business. Any new business?
Just wanted to let everybody know that last week, the Masco School Committee reduced its budget by $463,378, which results in Middleton's assessment being reduced by about $162,500.
Why do I think that you had a lot to do with that?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I argued against it.
Look at you, you spender.
Anybody else with any new
No,
business?
I think that was actually a very good move by the Masco School Committee. I appreciate that. I appreciate the work they did. Thank you, Costa.
All right, I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.
Thank you all.